What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for the next in the series of our transfer targets. Today we're going to be focusing on left backs. We've got 9 left backs to talk about today that can potentially back up Destiny Udogie or even challenge him for that left back spot as well. First up, we're going to be going to Ian Maatsen, Champions League finalist, has had a really good season at Dortmund where Chelsea just kind of swept into the side. We know Chelsea, well, we don't know actually, because noise coming out of Chelsea saying they're not actually struggling with the PSR numbers, but if you go by the figures and everything like that, it does suggest that they are struggling. 22 years of age, obviously owned by Chelsea, on loan at Dortmund, and he looks like a really good player. Yeah,
it was an interesting one last season because he started Chelsea for pre-season and he actually looked really good in pre-season. A lot of Chelsea fans I was speaking to were waxing lyrical about him. Then once the season started, he was getting a few appearances here and there, but never truly got a look in under Mauricio Pochettino. You're always favouring Chilwell and Cucurella, but gone on loan to Dortmund in January and has really been brilliant, playing in that kind of attacking fullback role. And he's actually quite a versatile player. Can play on the wing as well, can play on the right, can play on the left. But he's really found a home at Dortmund. The stats, his pie chart looks pretty good. As you can see, his passing stats and progressive carrying stats are really, really strong. Obviously playing quite an offensive side, or like Borussia Dortmund. Defensively, not as good, maybe because he applies his trade as a winger previously, so he's more of a winger playing at fullback than a natural fullback. But as you can see, he's very, very talented on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's really had made a home for himself this year in Dortmund. Going to be interesting to see how he fares against Real Madrid in the Champions League final. He scored in the semi-final, didn't he, against PSG, or was it in the quarters?
I think he scored in the first leg. I can't remember.
Either way, he's been so impressive in the Champions League run. Really impressive.
I do wonder whether his future is at fullback though, or whether he's going to be pushed forward the older he gets, because I think that's his natural position.
Do you think that? How do you think he would fare in maybe the inverted role that Destiny does? Because before Destiny came in, he'd never played the inverted role before. Maatsen, I don't think, has played the inverted role, but with his attacking talent that he does have, surely he'll really suit it.
No, I think he plays it quite well for Dortmund. I think he does play inverted because he plays as a fullback, but he actually cuts inside a lot because he's right-footed playing on the left, so he naturally inverts a lot. So I do think he would suit that role really well.
Okay. So, Ian Maatsen, how likely is to think that Chelsea would let him go to us? Do you think he's maybe a shoe-in to move to Dortmund permanently?
Probably, I would assume so. If I would assume they'd rather sell to Dortmund than to us. So, unlikely, but you never know.
You never know. Next up is a left-back that I've been super impressed with, not this season, but the last couple of seasons. It's Antonee Robinson, 26 years of age, 25 million market value on transfer market. Plays for Fulham, came through the ranks at Liverpool, I believe. And he is really a talented left-back, I think defensively, I think he's okay. He does well. But his offensive stats and his offensive ability has really caught my eye.
Yeah, and I've actually been... he's actually a defender I've been impressed with for a long time at Fulham. And I think he's actually been a pretty consistent performer for many, many years. But I think last season was probably his best season in the Fulham shirt. I remember even a few years ago when they got relegated, he was playing for Fulham, and I was actually really impressed by him. American international. He is definitely a natural fullback. He's definitely a fullback who likes to go on the outside. He likes to provide width. He likes to. He's got a big frame. I think he's quite tall. He has a really good stamina, and he's got decent quality on his left foot as well. Looking at his stats for an inverted fullback, you can see he performs quite well defensively. Performs really well. Tackles interceptions quite high. Although the one that's quite interesting, percentage of dribblers tackled is quite low, so maybe he's still got some work to do when he gets into those one-on-one duels defensively. Aerial's really high, and actually he profiles quite well for a inverted fullback in terms of his carries are really strong, passing is above average, and he receives a lot of passes, and he gets on the ball quite a lot. Fulham actually use him as quite a good outlet on that left-hand side as well. So he profiles quite well. Obviously for Fulham, he doesn't actually play that inverted role that much. He's usually providing width. But in terms of the stats suggest he might actually do quite well if asked to do that role.
Yeah, I think so. When I see him play, I just look at him as like a really aggressive player. Would he want to come like being a leading star in this Fulham team? Because he is one of their best performers this season. Would he want to come and maybe essentially be a backup for a doggy?
Especially at 26.
Yeah.
Probably not.
That's the thing I'm concerned about with him. But in terms of him just as an out-and-out player, I would love to see him at the club. I really would. I think he's a really good player. Next up is Alfie Doughty. Made his name in the Premier League this season for Luton Town, 24 years of age, 7 million market value on transfer market. And he's impressed a lot of people this year, hasn't he? With his high-flying marauding runs down that left-hand side, a number of assists this season. Usually when Luton are doing some good attacking plays, he's usually involved in them. And for a player that you could probably get for not such a big fee, you could probably pick him up for about 10 million with being relegated from the Premier League this season. He could be a good option just as a squad option.
Potentially. I do think he benefited from how Luton set up. He was basically like a wide midfielder, given a lot of license to get forward. I actually think if we still had Conte, he might actually be a better fit than I think Ange. If you look at his pie chart, he doesn't profile very well as a inverted fullback at all. Defensively, aerials are quite good, but the other defensive stats are not so strong. I also think he has been suspect defensively this season. He's definitely been impressed going forward. In terms of his passing, his ball carrying, it's not quite good. Where he does perform well, which is on a different chart, is obviously crossing, shot creating actions, chances created, his assists. He's got a really good left foot when given the opportunity to get in a position to whip a ball in. But I don't know if that's suited to what exactly he'll need to be as an inverted fullback.
But the thing is, the way that Luton played, he was just asked to like basically tug that touchline and get down the pitch on that left-hand side. He wasn't really asked to make those movements in the centre of the park and have that ball playing ability. So when I see him and when I look at maybe the qualities that he does have, I think he could potentially do it.
When I see him, I think he's a good technical player, but I haven't seen too much from him in spaces where he would be at Spurs, where he doesn't have the amount of space he has when he's playing with Luton, to suggest to me he could do that role. Obviously, he's clearly a good player in the attacking third. I think that's therefore to see. I feel like in the system that we play, I don't know, I've got my doubts whether he'd be the right fit.
Well, you let us know in the comments section below. Would Alfie Doughty be a good backup option for Spurs at left back, particularly for the price that he could be going for as well? Next up, we're going to be talking about Milos Kerkez, 20 years of age at Bournemouth, 20 million market value. Another player that's really impressed me this season.
Yeah, and a young defender who's played quite a lot of minutes for Bournemouth this season, really broken into the team. And so when a player at such a young age is playing regularly Premier League football in that kind of position, it's important to take note of how consistent he's been as well. He's got a pretty decent left foot. I think he's still got a lot to learn defensively. He still gets caught out quite a bit. I think as well his passing can be a bit haphazard, but he's got a decent cross on him. He's still very young, and he's at this level at this age, so I think he's only going to improve. His stats don't make for great reading at the moment. As you can see, defensively he's decent, but on the ball still got a lot of improving to do. I mean, I don't even think it's because of how Bournemouth play, because Bournemouth are quite an attacking team. They like to get forward, so you'd assume his stats would have been higher. So. And also touches, doesn't like to get on the ball too much, it seems. He likes to pass off responsibility on that front. Doesn't make too many passes, doesn't make too many carries. So I don't know if he's the right option, but I do think he's performing quite well at a young age. So maybe it's a case of he could improve as he gets older. Yeah,
it could be one that you just want to see a bit more from before you put your money where your mouth is on that one. Next up is Rayan Aït-Nouri of Wolves, 22 years of age, 32 million euros market value. every time I watch this guy play, not just this season. I mean, this season I think he's taken over to a new level, or the last season, should I say. The year before, I definitely saw some value in him. The way he gets on the ball, the way he charges on the pitch, he's really hard to deal with in terms of he's hard to tackle. And I feel like he can go on the outside, he can go on the inside. I feel like he could be a really good option for us, and he can play either side too.
Yeah, I like Aït-Nouri, and I think playing that wing-back system for Wolves really suits him because he likes to have a bit of space, because he likes to dribble. I think that's his biggest asset, his ability to get on the ball, drive opposition players, open up the space for better players like Hwang Hee-chan and Cunha to really make some space for them to, take advantage of it. And I actually think the inverted role, when it comes to him picking the ball up and driving opposition players and wriggling out of situations like Doggy does sometimes, I actually think Aït-Nouri could do that job really well. Why I do have question marks about him is maybe some of his passing and some of his passing decisions. You bring up his pie chart. As you can see, his carries and progressive carries are really, really good. And that's obviously what I've been talking about. But I think his passing is a bit loose. Sometimes he lacks care with his passing, lacks a bit of accuracy. I don't think he's the best passer. Defensively, he's a bit average. He's obviously he has that protection playing in a back three system, so has a bit of license to go forward. I don't know how good defensively he would be in one-on-one situations. The dribbler's tackled percentage suggests he's an average defender on those kind of situations. He does like to get the ball quite a bit. He does make himself available quite a lot in that system. But obviously, playing in the wing-back system, he likes to provide width rather than cutting inside. But looking at his profile, I do think he could work in the inverted role when it comes to his dribbling. But I think his passing still quite a big question mark on that.
Yeah, do you think though, like in terms of versatility, because I think I've seen him on the right hand side a number of times. On the left hand side, he's played as well. Maybe in game, sometimes he does switch over. For someone that can be versatile and cover both flanks, I think it could be a good option.
I've seen him play on the right, but that's I think usually down to injuries rather than I think him playing there because he's a good option there. I don't know if he could. I don't know if I'd trust him to be a versatile option there. I do think he's much better on the left than he is on the right.
And he's been touted by a lot of clubs this summer. Arsenal have been linked with him. Man City have been linked with him. Some of these big clubs. And I feel like once he moves to one of these big clubs, he can really take it on to the next level.
Well, he'll either sink or swim because he's really got to make sure he's defending a lot better maybe than he is at the moment. I think he's a talented player. I think there are still a few question marks whether he's ready to make that step up to a top 6 team.
Interesting. I think he is, to be honest. I really do think he is. But we'll see what happens. Let us know your thoughts on Aït-Nouri in the comment section below. Let's look at Vitaliy Mykolenko of Everton. €28 million market value, 24 years of age. We know Everton are struggling with the PSR at the moment, so he could be an option that you could get maybe for a decent price if they do need to sell by June the 30th.
Yeah, he's got a good left foot. Doesn't seem to be beaten in too many occasions as well down that left-hand side. He's quite good defensively, quite strong as well. I don't think he's a paciest, but he's no slouch. And when he gets into those final third opportunities, he does usually make something happen a lot of the time with his ability to either get a crossing or he's got a sweet long shot on him as well. We've seen score a few bangers in his time at Everton. You can see, if you look at the stats, obviously Everton, the way they play is not really possession-based, so I think the stats are pretty skewed on this, but defensively very strong. In possession, doesn't get on the ball too much. His carrying and passing perform very, very poorly, but as I say, Everton are a team who don't have possession too much, so they are skewed a bit by that. I do like him as a player. I do think as a backup to Doggy, he could be decent. I actually think in the inverted role, he's quite composed, and I do think that could suit him. He's not as good as a dribbler as maybe Aït-Nouri, but I think he's probably a better passer. So he could be an interesting option. I think he's a better defender than Aït-Nouri as well.
Yeah, I agree. I do think he's a better defender, but I don't know. I just feel like with Mykolenko, I do feel like he's a bit inconsistent at times. Sometimes he can be found wanting and doesn't really impose himself in the game like Rayan Aït-Nouri has done maybe consistently this season. So that's my kind of, I wouldn't say gripe, but my question about Vitaliy Mykolenko. Can he do it consistently over the course of a whole season? I do question that. Let's look at Bradley Locko of Brest. 10 million market value, 22 years of age. I mean, Brest have just had a sensational season out in Liga this season. What are your thoughts about him? I don't know much about him, to be fair.
Yeah, look, 22 years of age, has really come to the fore for Brest this season and performing regularly for them, over nearly 3,000 minutes in the last season, which is really impressive for him. And he's actually a very exciting prospect. He's been talked about with a few big clubs linked with him. But you can see why. If you look at his data, performs extremely well when you were looking at him maybe as an inverted fullback. Defensively, really well. He gets on the ball a lot as well, not shy to get on the ball. His passing and carrying performs very, very strongly as well. So he seems like a really well-rounded option in that position. And I think that's why Tottenham are taking a very close look at him. And given his age as well, I think that it's definitely an option if we can get the right price for him. I think he could be the perfect option to battle a doggy in that position.
Interesting. I'm just looking at the rumours at the moment surrounding him. I mean, Manchester United, Lille, Forest, Liverpool, Man City, Aston Villa, all chasing his signature at the moment, if you believe what's going on in the press. So he must have had an unbelievable season if that's the case.
Well, you can see how well Brest have done.
Yeah.
I think he's been a big part of that.
Yeah. David Raum, we're going to talk about, of RB Leipzig, 26 years of age, 17 million market value. He's a player that's actually impressed over the last couple of years for Leipzig at the left-back role. What's his stats saying?
Yeah, I remember he was really good for Hoffenheim before he signed for Leipzig, and a really offensive option on that left-hand side. Really likes to get forward, almost like a winger at times.
Yeah.
And for Leipzig, I don't think he's been as good for Leipzig as he was at Hoffenheim.
10 assists this season.
Yeah, he's still been good. I'm not saying he hasn't been good. I think Hoffenheim, he was exceptional. I think Leipzig has been pretty good as well. Well, I do wonder whether they're going to be open to selling him. I think he performs pretty well. Obviously, Leipzig are a pretty offensive team, so that helps. But if you look at his stats, the carrying stats are fairly weak. Passing's pretty strong though. Does like his it does get the ball forward a lot. Defensively, above average. And also when it comes to in possession, does get on the ball a lot. Gets in good positions and obviously finds himself in positions to receive passes quite a lot. So I think he's a pretty good player. Likes to get into the final third. Whether he's good enough in those tight spaces in the inverted role, not sure. But as we saw with Van der Ven recently, and he's been able to adjust his position so he doesn't have to find himself inverted too often. So maybe he could do that with some of these options here. I like David Raum. The only thing is at 26, he ain't coming here to play backup.
Yeah, that's the thing, which is a good point. He's getting a lot of recognition over the last couple of years in the national team as well, with 20 caps to his name. But, you can't ignore when you look at the stats in 31 games, 2 goals and 10 assists, so 12 goal contributions from a left-back.
Porro-esque.
Is sensational, really. Nicola Zalewski from Roma, 12 million market value, 22 years of age. I remember when we went out to the pre-season, saw Spurs play Roma, he was like probably man of the match that day, marauding down that left-hand side, really hard to deal with. He's got quality about him from an attacking sense, hard to get the ball off him, good ball carrier as well from what I remember. I don't think, though, he's able to hold down a complete starting spot at Roma, though.
He's still fairly young, but again, it's similar to Maatsen. I do think he's kind of a winger turned fullback. So whether that's his natural position, whether he's going to be there long term, is a big question. Obviously, looking at the stats, ball carrying is good. Obviously, he's a good dribbler due to his winger days, but defensively pretty poor. Passing is also pretty poor. Also, doesn't get on the ball that much. Doesn't get into positions where he's able to be found. So doesn't perform great on the data. Is definitely an exciting player when he's on the pitch and when you're watching him play. But whether he's a natural fullback who's going to be understudied to Doggy, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it looks as though like maybe first half of the season he was seeing a lot more minutes than second half of the season. So that's maybe the difference between Jose Mourinho and who they have now, De Rossi. So maybe that shows where those managers are at. But in his whole career, he's played so many different positions. He's played on the left, he plays on the right, left back, left wing, right wing, centre mid. So I can see some value in just having him around just to be a kind of utility man.
Well, I see that in two ways. When you're playing that many positions, that tells me that no one knows where your best position is. So it's kind of that's a negative for me. If you're playing like a few key positions, that's different. That means you're versatile and you're playing a lot. But if you're not getting many minutes and all your minutes you're getting are spread around all these different positions, that tells me you're not good anywhere rather than you're good everywhere.
When Mourinho did call upon him, he did usually play him at left back or left wing back. So that's Jose Mourinho. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. But every time I've seen him play, he just seems like a really exciting player to watch. He gets you off your seat, doesn't he?
He does.
So that's him. And that is all we have today. So out of all those players, those 9 left backs that we've gone through today, who do you reckon your number 1 would be to come in and challenge Destiny Udogie or play back up to Destiny Udogie?
Judging by what we're seeing here, I think Bradley Locko is definitely of interest to me. I think age-wise, profile-wise, and also maybe price-wise potentially as well. He seems to tick all the boxes. So
what was his market value?
10 million?
Locko, 10 million. He'll probably go for a lot more than that, though,
I'm
won't
sure, but in terms of anyone else on this list, especially anyone in the Premier League, you're paying a lot more, probably more than that. I think Maatsen would be a big option as well. I really like the look of him. If he's able to get him, he'll probably be my second option. And then maybe Robinson, potentially my third option, given that he actually performs quite well in the data and he's done quite well in the Premier League. Yeah,
just because I haven't seen Bradley Locko play, it's hard for me to put him as number 1, so I'd probably put Maatsen as my number 1, and I'd also stick Aït-Nouri in there just because I love him as a player, and I think he's so impressive every time I've seen him play, and I do think he's still got levels to go up as well with his age, only 22. So yeah, I'd probably say Maatsen, Aït-Nouri, and just because of the stats and the numbers behind him, Bradley Locko as number 3. So that's me. I want to know yours in the comment section below. Who would you like out of all these left backs we've gone through? If we haven't gone through the left back that you want, let us know in the comment section below as well. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.